welcome back to my channel. Hi, how are you guys today? I hope you guys are having a great day today, even though with the coronavirus and stuff is going on. I hope you guys are doing good. I hope you guys are staying safe out there and staying as sanitary as much as possible. I know this is a crazy world of times, and just stay safe out there and continue to try to find a hobby and try to keep you guys just try to keep busy. Just try to be busy during this time because I know it's hard being in a house bored in a house and I'm in the house bored. I know how that is, and I hope you guys are doing okay mentally and just trying to keep yourselves busy. So, if you guys do not recognize my face and you are new here, hi, my name is Emily. I make videos every week. I'm getting in the vibe. I feel good making videos. So today we're gonna be talking about a true crime case, guys. I haven't did one in a long time. This will be my second true crime case. This case is in Michigan. It's called the Ipsy Ripper, the Coed murders, or the Michigan murders. This happened right here in Ann Arbor, in the Ipsy area, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. And yeah, that's what we doing here today. I'm telling a story, true crime story, girl, and doing my makeup at the same time. Disclaimer, by the way. Warning: this video contains for a lot of adult dialogue, violent, and a description of crime scenes. This is for mature audiences. Viewers' discretion is advised. Oh, and this mentions sexual assault and a lot of um, murderous things. So yeah, viewer discretion is advised. Don't worry about me using the water bottle as a mic. Okay, I don't have a mic. I'm gonna get one though. But I also want to have another disclaimer. I mean no disrespect to the family. I know this was probably a horrific time for you guys when you were going through all this at hand at the time. I wish you guys love and greatness. I know it's been like over 50 years, but even through time, I know a recovery of losing a loved one is a lifetime, especially if that was your kid or a sister or relative. And hope you guys are doing good during this virus, and I hope you guys are just doing great in general. And I mean no disrespect. I'm just wanting to tell this story, and yeah, I really do wish you guys the best. And yeah. So today, y'all, we're gonna be talking about the Ipsy Ripper. Have y'all heard of him? This is like a crazy story to research. Um, he's also known as the co-ed killer, the Michigan killers. Um, yeah, this was back in the 1960s, around that time. It was way before my mom was born, maybe 3 years before my mom was born. This is before the term serial killer was even a thing. This is before Ted Bundy. This is before Charles Manson. This is ages. Well, I think 7 years before those happened. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get into the story. So the dude name was John Norman Collin. He also got a Canadian name, well, last name, which is Chapman, which is from his father, but we get into that in a little bit. So he was born June 17th, 1947 in Windsor, Canada. He's a Gemini. Um, my birthday is 2 days before he is. Yeah, it's crazy. He was the youngest out of three children. His father left him at an early age, leaving his mother Loretta, a single mother. That's terrible. Shortly after um, John's father leaving, his mom ended up getting married to this guy. For some reason, I couldn't find his mom ended up getting married 3 times after leaving John's father, but I only can find one of the guys' names, and that will be explained later. But yeah, shortly after she got married, it only lasted a year because both husbands were very abusive and alcoholics. So, and they were both abusing the kids, John and his brothers. and sister. I believe it was a brother and sister. Um, it's even said that this first stepfather would like throw him in front of a car to his mother, and another time he would use him as a shield while being confronted with a gun. So John had it pretty rough, and he was only two. He was only 2 or 3 at this time. So John had it rough coming out the womb. Set up like his life was already messed up once he came out the womb. So that was pretty bad. When he was 4, he moved from Canada to Detroit. So at this time, his mother was working as like a waitress. She was doing her thing as like being a single parent. A little bit after moving to Detroit, his mom ended up meeting a man named William Collins who adopted all 3 children. So I guess like at this point, John's mother Loretta really thought she really hit the jackpot. But little did she find out he was also abusive and an alcoholic. So at this point, by the age of saw like 3 different types of father figures, and they were all abusive, alcoholics. So he just kind of had it rough in the beginning of his like childhood. Like it just wasn't really looking good for him when he was a kid. So that marriage ended up ending. Um, I forgot, I couldn't get the exact day of when it ended, but that marriage ended up ending, and that was kind of about it. While I was doing research on this case, it was kind of hard to find like his childhood, like what was really going down. But I did get most of like his like what was going on in his high school. There was a light at the end of the tunnel because John ended up graduating high school when he was 18. He was more like a popular boy. He was an honor student. He was the captain of the football team. Well, he was a tri-captain, excuse me. He was a president of the C Club, and he was a star pitcher of the baseball team. So his life took a turn when he went to high school. So he was the man. You know what I'm saying? He dated regularly, but women that he dated would say that like he was pretty angry and moody all the time, and he was like sexually aggressive. So that kind of like made a lot of women like step back, but a lot of women did find him attractive. Like they thought he was a cute boy. So after him graduating high school, same year, John ended up signing up for Eastern University, and he where he would study education. He wanted to become a teacher. He wanted to teach people. So, that's what he was doing while he was in college. And then he ended up getting into the fraternity that was called Tri, I mean, that a Tri fraternity. But that didn't really last too long because he ended up getting kicked out because he was being accused of cheating. So that really didn't last too long. But even though he ended up getting kicked out of that, he still maintained like a job. He was working part time, but he was a full time student. He was working at the EMU McKinney Union as a clerk. So he was getting his money. He was trying to make it out here because it's hard out here for a pimp. And that was kind of what he was doing. He was just living the old good college life. Now, during his sophomore year, John's grades started to drop, and then like his one of his professors started to accuse him of cheating. And as the information I gave you so far, this was not like John. Because he in high school, like he had good grades, he was a good student, like he was on an honor roll. So like at this point, John's life started to change. And he ended up meeting this guy. His name was Andrew. manual, and they started to do like petty thefts together, like stealing like car parts and other automobile parts. And you know, John loved motorcycles. Remember this for later. He loved motorcycles, and he was stealing parts in order to have his motorcycle. At the same time, John was so attractive that he actually started to model, and he will appear in like bodybuilding magazines and show like his bare chest and rippling muscles. They as they described. So like, he was still being that pretty boy, you know, he was doing a thing. Um but one of his girlfriends from high school do confirm that like he was a gentleman. He was very polite. He was nice and very attractive. But like the only thing that they had an issue was, like I said, other women said before, is that he was just always moody and angry all the time. Like he just walked around angry, especially at women, and nobody really knew. We're gonna get into like the victims of this case because there's a lot of them. There's at least 8, and yeah, that's a little bit about John. So the first victim went missing on July 9th, 1967. Her name was Mary Frazier. She was 19 at the time. She had went out on a walk, like just to get some fresh air. Like she told her roommate, like, hey, like girl, I'm about to go outside, get some fresh air, girl. Like it's hot, it's the summertime. Like I'm about to go outside. And so that's exactly what she did. But to a little bit about Mary, she also went to EMU. She had studied accounting, and she was working as like a secretary. Remember this for later. At EMU. So like she was doing her thing. And when she went missing, a neighbor had said that like she had seen Mary walking towards her apartment, but like a blue gray car just kept on like stopping her and just trying to talk to her. And the neighbor said they had seen this about 2 times, of like this blue gray car coming and trying to talk to her. And Mary was just like, bro, I'm good. Like, I'm just taking a walk. Like, I'm chilling. And, like, that was the last time that she was seen, was when she was telling this blue gray car no. 4 weeks later, August 7th, 2 teenage boys end up discovering Mary's body at a abandoned farm, badly decomposed, and she had been identified. And she was so decomposed that she only could be identified by her dental records. So like somebody just like, I bet these boys were traumatized seeing first like a naked body, a dead body, and like being like it being really decomposed. So I know like these boys are like traumatized. But Mary was stabbed about 30 times in the chest and the abdomen. So like, you know, so she was stabbed about 30 times. And her feet was severed above the ankle, and her thumb and sections of their fingers were missing on one hand. And on her forearm on the other side have been severed from the body. Those parts have never been found. Like her severed forearm, which is terrible. Like that has never been found. And multiple abrasions on her chest and torso was indicating that she was beaten before she died. So that's crazy. That is insane, y'all. And then the investigators also seen that like her body was at least moved 3 times before her body was found. So like the killer was coming back. But at this time, investigators really didn't know if it what why they were like why the killer was doing this. Like they still trying to figure it out. Then like but the investigators did notice that like when the first time the body was moved, it was on top of like bottles and cans hidden like behind the trees. And then the second time she was dragged and was like in a field and remained exposed but like not covered. And then the third time the killer came back and moved the body 3 more feet, and that's where she was discovered. So like the killer just kept on moving it and coming back and not really being slick about it. Like the killer just, I guess, kind of knew what he was doing. 2 days later, after like the police clean up the crime scene and do what police do, Mary's body is at a funeral home. And at this time, like while the body's at the funeral home, a young man shows up. And he shows up at the funeral home, girl. And the okay, so 2 days later, a young man showed up at the funeral home where Mary was at, right? Okay. And he asked the employee workers if he could take pictures of the body, and it's for the family to have as a keepsake. I don't know what dog was thinking, but no, sir. So like the employee was like, no, like what do you mean? He was just like, so the employee, the employee ended up saying no, and the young man said, and I quote, "You mean you can't fix her up enough so I can just get a picture of her?" End quote. So the employee was like, "No, bro, like chill, like you can go." So like the young man ended up leaving, and the employee of the funeral described this man um, very vaguely, but like they like the employee said like he was very handsome, he was white, he had dark hair, but the camera didn't catch him, so it was really like nothing much police could do because that's all like the employee gave them was like he's handsome, he got dark hair, and and he drove a blue grayish car. And that's all really the funeral employee could give them. So that was kind of about it. And no one suspected John at this time. So 1 year later, after Mary's murder, another woman had disappeared. Her name was Jane Shell. Sorry, I am going to butcher these last names because I am not great at pronouncing stuff. So don't come for me, okay? So she was 20 years old and she was an art student, and she was last seen by her roommate Suzanne Cobb at a bus stop on Washington Ave, June 30th, 1968. And oh, fuck. Suzanne was going to go visit her boyfriend. Not Suzanne. I'll get this one more time. Joanne was going to go visit her boyfriend, and Suzanne walked her to the bus stop. I believe she was at like Ann Arbor Land, and like she walked her to the bus stop or whatnot so that she can go catch the bus and go see her man. You know what I'm saying? But then Joanne quickly realized she missed the bus. So at this point, Joanne decided that she was going to hitchhike. Now, during this whole entire time that Joanne is trying to hitchhike, her friend Suzanne is trying to talk her out of it. As Suzanne is trying to talk Joanne out of hitchhiking, a red and black Pontiac containing 3 men pulled up on them, you know, rolled up. They was riding through the city, pulled up on them, and basically asking them if they wanted a ride. Suzanne declines, but Joanne basically hops in. And according to Suzanne, it was the driver who was asking Joanne like if she wanted to, like basically she wanted a ride and basically like she can join them. And she described this man, young, about 20, dark hair parted to the side, and basically was just like, hey, I give you a ride, what's up, you know? And this is during the time where hitchhiking was basically okay. Like, everybody was like, felt like they were safe. This is during the time where everybody will leave their doors unlocked. This is during the time where, like, hippie peace and love was at its prime. So, like, everybody believed they cared about everyone, and basically it was basically, honestly, to everyone, it was safe to do that. So, you know, Joanne ends up going, and basically before she leaves, she promised Suzanne that she was going to call her after, after when she makes it to her boyfriend's house. But, Suzanne was just like, okay, girl, give me a call. I want to make sure you're safe, make sure you're okay. And, Suzanne gets in the car and leaves. So after 3 hours, Suzanne decided to call the police and file a missing persons report because Suzanne did not ever give her a call. Not once. So, Suzanne is like really worried for her friend at this point. So Joanne's body was found July 5th, 1968, and she was stabbed about 25 times with a knife. She was also raped, and several stab wounds punctured her lungs, liver, and her corduroid artery. Wounds were like found behind her ear, resulting in a skull fracture. So, like, it's a lot going on, girl. And her throat was slashed, and her mini skirt was tied around her neck. So, like, you know, I know this was like horrific thing to hear that your roommate was basically murdered. Like, I know she was going through a lot during that time, like, cause definitely not. So police sought out about 150 owners of that description of the car that Suzanne had given to them, and established a lot of alibis for everyone who owned that car. And there was a lot of men that had that car during that time, but there were no leads. And then about 2 months after, eyewitnesses said that they seen Joanne walking with like a young man the day that she disappeared. And they believe that it was John because the eyewitnesses were students at EMU, and they recognized them that it was John because of the car description. And, John was riding around in a red and black car. So after that, after when the students was like, hey, like, this is John, like, I really do believe this is John, like, I really think y'all should go check that out. And so police do, and they told the police that, like, the killer looked like John. They went to go question him. So they went, as they're going to go question John. John said he had an alibi. He said he was at his mama house in Detroit, the suburbs of Centerline, and that, like, he wasn't there that weekend, girl. He was chilling at his mom's, and that he didn't come back until July 1st of that morning. And, police found him really calm and impressionable, and basically took his word for it. But the police failed to check his alibi. So they didn't even go ask his mama to see if he was there. So they basically let John slide. Which is crazy because, like, why didn't y'all go check his alibi? 4 days after, when Joan was found, another victim ended up popping up, and her name was Mary Lynn Skelton. Sorry if I butchered the last name. I suck at pronouncing last names. Don't come for me. She was last seen March 24th, 1969, and the last time she was seen is hitchhiking near Ann Arbor, and basically she was last seen alive by like a drive-in restaurant on Washington Ave. Her body was found the next day, and her body was mutilated, and it was found by like a remote area in a vacant house, well, behind a vacant house, just a few hundred yards where Joanne's body was discovered. One of the investigators described the injuries that was inflicted on Marilyn was the worst he's seen in 30 years of his work. So like the violence between the victims was increased with her for some reason. The autopsy shows that she died with numerous fractures covering the third of her skull and one side of her face. So like before she died, she like the killer really just got violent with her. All the wounds that she had obtained was by like a blunt object. She was also beaten and tortured, and the killer stuffed like a piece of her skirt into her throat to like muffle her screams. And like a garter belt was tied around her neck, and deep like lacerations on her body was believed was caused by like a metal strap of some sort. And oh man, this is a lot that happened to her, man. And a stake nearby that was broken from a near tree was shoved in her vagina. So the killer was getting quite violent and just doing stuff. But like blood spatter that was by the crime scene indicated that the murder was very close and that she was basically moved also, and that she was basically the blood spatter that was on the ground showed that she was trying to fight back and that she was trying to escape her attacker. So like at this time, like Ann Arbor and the Ypsi area was scared because like at this point 3 girls is coming up missing and being dead. So Ann Arbor was worried. So another girl ended up going missing, and her name was Jane Louise Mixer, and she was 23. She disappeared like March 20th of 1960. Was supposed to be posting a note on the bulletin board like in her college like dorm room, and like she was looking for a ride to go home to Muskegon so that like she could go meet her family about moving to New York. And she was a U of M student, and I really couldn't find what she was studying, but like she really wanted to move to New York. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So her body was found lying across like a grave in like Dayton Cemetery, and like her body was found literally the next day. So like March 21st. So she was fully clothed, and she was covered by her own raincoat, and a copy of like the book Catch 22 was by her side. Autopsy revealed that she was shot with like a 22 caliber pistol, and she was strangled with nylon stockings that weren't hers. She was also sexually assaulted. What investigators found was that the killer was sexually motivated. The only reason we investigators know this was because the killer had like pulled her tights down near like like to expose her thighs, but like her pad was showing. So like the he so yeah, that is. And like details of like the murders of like Mary and Jane, yeah, Joanne were like totally different. And but the intention of like rape and her student status and her nylons being tied around her neck and the proximity of where all the girls were abducted were pretty close, and the investigators believe these were all made by like all these murders were done by the same person. So you know fourth girl missing, well, murdered. So like at this time investigators was just like, yo, we need to hurry up because these girls just keep popping up. gone and then dead. Just need to rush. So at this point, the head investigator, his name was Stephen Harvey, and he had his hands full because like a lot of women were coming up missing and then murdered, and their bodies were literally being found the next day. Like, so like he had his hands full. So like he's really trying to work hard and trying to figure out what's going on. And at this time, they still trying to figure out what the killer's MO is because like they still trying to figure this out. So at this time, Ann Arbor was scared, like, and the public was really like, hide your wives, hide your kids, like, you know. I think I was watching a documentary on this, and like basically the girls that were being interviewed around like the EMU campus, they were basically like, they didn't want to walk by themselves, and basically they made sure they called their friends once they made it home because they were really scared for their life. So at this point, while the public is really scared and really don't know what's going on, the governor at the time, his name was Milligan, and he really was like, you know what, our policemen really need some help. Like, we need to build a task force with the state police, and we all can work together and really figure out what's going on. So that's exactly what Milligan did. He asked the state police to like come and help, and the the investigator Harvey was basically friends with the guy that was now taking lead of the task force. So, they working together to see what's going on. So, at this point, all four women were basically in five different jurisdictions where the girls have been abducted and murdered and their bodies were found. So, like, they still, like, they got a lot on their hands right now. By early April, law enforcement agencies basically came together and assigned 20 investigators to basically figure out his MO and to figure out, you know, what's going on in these four homicides and see what's similar and what's different. So, like, at this point, they are working hard to see what's going on because everybody's scared for their lives and everybody's scared to, like, basically send their daughters places. Like, everyone is shook at this point. So investigators finally find like the MO of the killer. All victims were brunettes and white. Each victim, excluding Mixer, have been beaten with a blunt object or like a a blunt object. And each victim was at least a 15 radius of Washtenaw. And then each victim, excluding Mixture, had knife wounds to the neck. And each article of clothing had been tied around their neck. And each woman that was murdered was on her period the time of her death. And then, you know, they're like, okay, we got all this down pat. Okay, what else do we need to do? At this point, the task force believed that they should do a technique called like babysitting searching. Um, Harvey described in the documentary, basically they had like patrol officers. They basically had everybody of like each part of the police crew just basically just keeping a lookout at what's going on because like it's four women that are just there are women disappearing and we need to find out this problem and dead it now. So but while they were doing this babysitting search, nothing came up of it. So nothing was really found, and at this point, it was useless because nothing was coming up. Sadly, another victim pops up, and her name was Dawn Louise Blossom, and she was 13, and she was the youngest out of all the Michigan murders at this point. Well, this is called a lot of things. This is called the murders, the Ipsy Ripper story, or like the co-ed killers, or the Michigan murders. However you want to name a girl, do you, do you? But yeah, she was last seen April 15th of 1969, at 7:30, walking home from like her friend's house. So like that's when she was last seen. So, her body, I believe, was found the next day. A lot of these bodies were found literally the next day. Like the killer at this point really did not care. So she was basically found in a road in Ipsy, and she was wearing like a white blouse, but like her bra was pushed around her neck. She was stabbed in the chest and genitals. So the killer really had a thing of like really doing something to like the victim's lady bits. So, he was a sick man to say the least. And she was also slashed. Oh man, she was slashed in the breast, the butt, and the stomach. So, and she was also strangled to death with like electrical wire that was left knotted around her neck when her body was found. Also, a handkerchief was stuffed in her throat to basically muffle any sounds that she was making during this attack. Um, Her orange sweater was found in like a desert farmhouse 100 yards from where her body was found. Um, Glass particles from the basement of the farmhouse were very consistent of what was found in her shoes. And another piece of clothing and some electrical wire and some fresh blood was found in the house, and investigators determined this is where she was killed at. So later, investigators end up finding Mary Lynn's earring that was purposely placed by the killer, and basically linking the other crimes was basically linking other future or further crimes at this farmhouse. So like police was investigators would find like, yeah, we found his lair. We got it. You know what I'm saying? Yes, we finally know where he basically come in and, murdering and doing these crazy things to these women. We finally got his lair. Girl, guess what? Guess what? On May 13th, the farmhouse was burnt up, girl. And destroyed everything. And destroyed everything, girl. So after the farmhouse being burned down, investigators saw in the driveway of the farmhouse lilac, five clipped lilacs were found, like evenly lined up on the driveway. And investigators basically took this as a message, and basically took this as a message by the killer, basically symbolizing each victim. So at this point, five girls have been abducted and murdered at this point. And, you know, and the killer did not care. He was just like, yeah, like, y'all not gonna catch me. Like, I'm really playing with your mind. And, and investigators was just really trying to work hard and really catching who was doing all of this. So another victim ended up like coming up missing and murdered, and her name was Elizabeth Collum, and she was 21 years old at the time, and she was a graduate student of U of M in fine arts, and she disappeared shortly after midnight on June 8th of 1969, and she was basically at a party at the Depot House in Ann Arbor, if you guys know where that's at. And she was last seen walking towards her apartment, and that was kind of it. And walking towards her apartment after leaving the party. So on June 9th, three teenage boys end up finding her body partially nude in a field close to where the burnt farmhouse was. And there were several like dry blood stains, and two of her buttons was missing on her raincoat, and they were in like a gravel pit, indicating that like that's where she was murdered at. So she had multiple wounds, including two two stab wounds, like puncturing her heart, and she was basically shot in the head before her neck was slashed, and was the neck was like slashed so deep that her spine was severed. Jesus, like what? He was a sick man. Gunshot wounds on her right thumb suggested that she was basically trying to defend herself from her attacker before being shot in basically point blank range. She was also raped, and her clothes was like scattered all over her body except for one shoe. So like they never could find that other shoe. So yeah, like six women coming up missing, and you know investigators is having like a really hard time finding out what's going on. But like they was putting in work though, because in July of 1969 the task force investigated more than 1,000 sex offenders. 1,000, girl. They investigated over 1,000 sex offenders, and they sorted out at least 800 tips from informants, and they conducted several interviews, but like nothing really came up out of it. Like they are really working hard trying to figure out what was going on, and at this point like the public was at its most outcry. Like the outcry was high, girl, like because all these women are coming up missing, and like nobody knows who's doing it. Like everybody looking behind their shoulder, like what's going on? Is it you? Is it you? Or is it you? So like everybody is looking at like everybody's a suspect. So students at EMU, they start to arm themselves, girl. They're like, not me. And they also adopted like a buddy system where all the female students refuse to walk on their own unless like they're in threes, or unless like a male friend would walk with them. And also during this time, the sales, girl, of like tear gas, knives, and like security locks has increased. It increased, girl, because like everybody was scared. Then hitchhiking became very rare at this point because everybody like, yep, you ain't gonna get me, sir. Nope, not today. Nope, 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 no. But sadly, another victim popped up, and her name was Karen Sue Bitterman, and she was 18. And on July 23rd of 1969, that's when she had like basically disappeared. And she was a student at EMU attending summer classes before her disappearance. And also, like, her parents was like worried for her. So like, they were writing letters back and forth. This is way before like cell phones came out and you can just text somebody and give them like a quick response. People were writing letters to each other, and she had just written a letter to her parents saying that she was being safe and careful, and that she was basically good. But sadly, you know, that wasn't the case. Um, Her roommate ended up reporting her missing because she didn't return to her room after curfew, and she was last seen at like a wig shop that was in downtown Ann Arbor. 3 days later, after her disappearance, her body was found face down, nude, in like a wooded gilly alongside like a parkway. So like it was wooded and like gilly alongside parkway. And she was like beaten, like intensively beaten with like lacerations so severe that sections of her skin were like exposed and was like showing like tissue like from her skin. Like so like investigators found like skull fractures and brain injuries that was caused by like a blunt object. And that like from like her neck to her shoulders and her breasts were like burned, but like some was caused by like a caustic agent that like she was forced to drink. So like Jesus. And some of her clothing was like placed down her throat, basically like the other victims. So like the killer was really keeping his MO and really just really doing it. And um but her official cause of death was listed as like a strangulation, but the head injuries that she obtained could have been like fatal at any time. So, those also could be a cause of her death, but, investigators were kind of unsure. And they also determined that she was raped prior to her murder. And some of her torn underwear was placed inside of her vagina. The underwear that the police found contained some human semen and like hair clippings, but they were blonde and it didn't match like the dark hair from the victim. So the police was like, what? Why? But investigators knew that the killer would come back to the scene, to the crime scene, because that's what he did with all of the murders. So they knew he was gonna come back. So, what the police did, they blocked this part like of like Karen where she was found and stuff like that. They blocked this out from media so they didn't like tip off the killer. So at this time, like I don't know who brought this man, but somebody like we need to go get a sidekick because maybe he can help y'all figure this out. So that's exactly what they did. They ended up bringing Peter Hugos. I suck at last names, guys. Just stay. Don't come for me. But basically, they brought this Peter guy, this sidekick, to the scene, and like Steve, like Harvey, the investigator was really not feeling this. He like, why is this man here? He's a sidekick. He really didn't believe in that stuff. So he was just like, why is this man here? And basically, some of the people who believe it's just like, come on, just let him see, just let him see. So Harvey was very stern. Was like, okay, he can see the body once like the state troopers state police get done doing what they doing. They still like investigating down there and like they're doing their thing. So after when they're done, then you can go to the body and do what you need to do. So Harvey described Peter just basically looking like he was meditating and like basically doing that meditation thing. So that's really how he described it. So after when Peter was done, he kind of just got up and left. So after when Peter left, um, investigators decided to put like a J.C. Penney mannequin down there where Karen's body was. So when to see if the killer would come back to where the body was. So at this point, the killer, whoever it was, they didn't know that the police knew that the body was found. So, they just put like a mannequin down there and had like a police officer monitor the body all night. Basically, that's what they did. And that same night, Peter ended up like doing like a press release basically describing what the killer may look like and basically what they may find in this investigation. And Peter had came up with, he was just like, hey, You guys are going to find a homemade ladder somewhere. You guys are also going to arrest someone who is not born in this country. He's also a young man, and when y'all arrest him, he's going to have some type of like foreign cash. So police were just like, okay, hopefully, like, you got this right, because we need to we got to crack this down quick. So around 2 o'clock in the morning the next day, a policeman did find like a man running away from where Karen's body was found. And during this morning, it was like heavy rain and it was raining. So investigators also known knew that like the killer will also only visit the body if like it was raining outside. And I guess during these times it will rain like a lot. So after, doing the whole mannequin thing of what was going on, police went to where Karen was last seen, and that was the wig shop. And, they went to go see, like, you know, did they see the man that, like, she ran off with that day? So, that's exactly what police did. They went to go question the store clerks from the wig shop, and the clerks, the store clerk would say that Karen insisted that she would watch her, leave, because she was accepting a ride from a guy she didn't know. And the store clerk will also say she recalls Karen saying this while she's purchasing her wig. And I quote, "I have got to be either the bravest or the dumbest girl alive because I just accepted a ride from this guy." And, and that's what Karen did. She ended up hopping on the motorcycle and leaving. And the store clerk would describe this man as young, and he had like a short hair side part, dark hair, and he drove like a blue motorcycle. And the police who was basically questioning the store clerk was like, basically took a step back and was like, a blue motorcycle, dark side parted hair, that's not like John. Yeah, that gotta be John, because he knew John was a former frat brother driving a blue motorcycle around that afternoon when Karen went missing. So, the policeman was like, yeah, this gotta be him. This gotta be him. This gotta be him. So what the policeman did, he ended up following up with Collins, well, John, and he confirmed that he was in that basically questioning John to confirm that he was riding around in this blue motorcycle. And after questioning him and everything, this policeman went back to the wig shop and showed photographs of John to the store clerks, and the store clerks was like, "Yep, that's him. That's him. That's him. This was the last person who seen Karen live. That's him. Him right there. I recognize him." So, police was just like, yes, finally, police were like, yes, we finally found out who's been doing this. Like, police was just like, yes, yes. Also, during this time, investigators was able to confirm that John either known or have been acquainted with most of the victims. He have been a neighbor of Mary and Joanne. He have been working like across from Mary, and he had dated a girl who lived across the road from Dawn. So possibly he knew all of his victims. Possibly. That's what investigators discovered. And during Karen's disappearance, parents, Collins was residing at his uncle's house, watching his dog while he was on his family. And once he returned 3 days later, Karen's body was found. And, at first, David did not want to believe that his nephew was the cause of this, even though the evidence against him was pretty compelling and very shocking to him, because he's just like, my nephew would never, ever, like, y'all need to chill. My nephew did not do this. Y'all need to go pin this on somebody else, because y'all really wilding right now. But one day, David like basically saw something different in his basement floor. Like his like basement was like painted different. So like what he did was he started scraping at the floor of his basement and to see like red dots on the ground that he suspected that was blood. So what he did was he reported it as he should. He was just like, "Yep, no, come check this out." And shortly after him reporting it, his house became like a big forensic investigation. Investigators discovered that the hair clippings that was found in Karen's underwear belongs to the sons of Likes. Well, David's, the son of David's. And remember they were on vacation, so the investigators, like, how would your son's hair end up in her underwear? So like, what? So David explained that his wife cut his son's hair right before they left for vacation, and like basically she left it in a nice pile and basically was ready to go on vacation. She like, we can clean this up later, let's go, we need to spend some time out. A bit about that, and blood stains from where David found in like 9 places in his basement were linked to Karen because she was type A. Well, her blood was type A, was in there, and that the hairs that was in her underwear matched the ones that was on the ground in the basement, and that still denying even knowing her. He like, yo, I don't know what you talking about, bro. Like, y'all tripping. But a neighbor eventually comes out and says that like she kept hearing like muffled sounds and screams in the household of David's when Karen had the day of when Karen had went missing. So at that point, like, there was nothing much he can do. Like, he couldn't cover up his name. Like, he finally got caught, killing. And like, he was still denying that he even knew her and everything. But like, there was just too much evidence against him to even like not arrest him. You know what I'm saying? July 1st, 1969, John was under arrest, and he was 22, and he was a senior at EMU still. He was still a senior. He was still going to school. Meanwhile, doing all this crazy stuff. He was still, I don't know how he was managing school and doing crazy stuff, but he did it. You know, people need to find better stuff to do, other hobbies, cause You remember what I said about Peter and his findings of when he went to go see the body of Karen? He did end up finding a homemade. Police did finding like a homemade ladder leaning against the wall in David's home. And when John was arrested, he had $4 Canadian, and he was a young man. He was 22. And also, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? He wasn't born in this country, girl. You remember what I said? He was born in Canada. So like, he was right, girl. That's crazy. He basically had him down to the T, girl. He had John guessed out to a T, hunty. Do you hear me? On July 1st of 1969, he was arraigned for the murder of Karen Bedman. Shortly after that, Investigators were contacted by investigators in Canada, I mean, not Canada, California, and they believe John was possibly in like another murder. Like, yo, what? So basically, there's another victim. California police calls the like Washtenaw County detectives. They're like, okay, we're gonna send two people down there, and we gonna see what's up because let's see if we can find some connections. So this other victim was named Roxy Ann Phillips, and she was 17 at the time of her disappearance. She went missing on June 30th of 1969, and she was going to go like mail a letter to a friend, and she was going to go see a friend. And when she was discovered, she was badly decomposed, and she was nude except for a pair of sandals, and she had like a red and white belt from her dress that she was wearing tied around her neck. She was also strangled to death, and this matched like the MO of like what was going on in most of like the Michigan murder cases. Like of all the other victims, they were mainly like strangled to death by something. And she was also one of her earrings were missing, and several of her things were like scattered all over State Route 68. So like investigators from Washington, I was like, yeah, this definitely sound like him. Like, we about to go in like deeper investigation and see like what's going on because this ain't it. Like, let's see if we can. Let's do some little bit of digging. Camera because I cannot talk and do my lashes at the same time. I could never do that. I always mess up and accidentally pinch my eye and stuff, and I ain't want y'all to see too Roxy's disappearance. Sorry, there's a lot of names. But one of her friends said that she actually became friends with a dude named John that went to EMU, Eastern Michigan University, if y'all don't know already. And he drove like a gray blue car. Police found out on June 21st that Collins was living in a trailer that he had rented with one of his old roommates named Andrew Manuel. Remember the one he was stealing car parts and stuff with? And they both was renting a trailer under fake names. Like a fake check in order to like pay for this trailer that they were living in. And went down. John came back to Michigan like nothing happened. And a little side note here, that same like week that, you know, Roxy's body was found, um, John like went to the doctor to get checked out for poison oak. Side note, I forgot to mention this, but her body was by like a poison oak like area, and like he had went in to get like a checkup for poison oak the week that Roxy was found. Is he guilty or is he guilty? You know? Like this case frustrates me so much. Like, is he guilty or is he guilty? Side that they would link, you know, Roxy's murder to the Michigan murders because it just has so many similarities. Basically, well, she was 17, her name was Nancy, would basically describe John from Michigan. And, he was like 5'11", clean cut, and like he went to Eastern University, and he was basically sharing like with her like how he wanted to become a teacher. He wanted like that was his passion, and he's basically expressing like his inspirations of what he wanted to be to her. She never suspected a thing. California did. They indicted um, John Collins, and they also questioned Andrew because like he was also down there in California with him, so he was just like investigators believe that like he had to have some part of it, but later investigators basically ruled him out because like it seemed like he really did not know like what was going on, and he really didn't know what he was talking about. So they were just like, yeah. They ended up ruling him out on December 18th of 1969. So like they're like, yeah, he didn't have no knowledge of what was going on. They were just here to chill, and that was kind of it. But was indicted for Roxy's murder, and well, the evidence that was basically indicting him was asked to be sealed until after him being charged with Karen's murder. So they were just like, hold up, like let's let him get charged for this murder, and then we gonna get him. We gonna get him after, we just gonna seal it until he can like go to jail for this because he ain't getting away with this one, baby. On June 2nd of 1970, 3 years before my mama was born, because my mom was born in August. 3 years before my mama was born, he was on trial for murder of Kim. He was only on trial for her murder only. I know this kind of pisses everybody off, pisses me off too, because it's like the investigators and the police were so close, but yet so far. And like, I felt like he should have got charged with all murders. And during his trial, there's advised him not to testify on his own defense, and about 47 eyewitnesses appeared on the behalf of the prosecution, including Collins' roommate, Arnold Davis, and the shop clerk, and 5 witnesses also appeared on, like, to testify, who was the alibi for when Kim disappeared. Not Kim, Karen, when she disappeared. But the court was like, the court included on August 19th, 1970, that John was indeed guilty and was found guilty on the first degree murder of Karen. But he still remained that he was innocent. He didn't know the girl. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to life with hard labor. I don't even know what that means. I guess he's gonna be working. I guess that's what that means. I guess I should look that up. That he was solitary confinement and without the possibility of parole. So like they're like, yeah, he ain't getting out, sir. You tripping? Definitely not getting out of here, cause And what's so crazy is after John was in jail, well, in prison, there was no more killings. No more girls started to like come up missing, and basically everything kind of went back to normal after when John went to jail. Well, prison, guys, prison, not jail. Jail and prison are two different things. The town was happy. Like the public was happy that like someone is finally like going to jail. Like, but his mom, Loretta, and his sister showed up to his trial, and after when he was found guilty, they were like in tears. And Harvey, the head investigator, described like his mom and his sister as like knockouts, and that's what he said. Like he was like they were like good looking, like they were fine, and like they were women that could take someone's breath away. And later on, investigators learned that like John's mom was like a prostitute, and that's why John started killing these women, because he had some type of hatred for women who looked like his mom, and basically he felt like women feel better for like he had like a mom issue thing, and that's why investigators believe that John had like a mom issue thing, and that's why he was killing these women after him witnessing his mom prostitute. So that's no excuse, but that's what investigators believed. Oh, the trial was said and done. The California police, well, the California like authorities waived all like the extraction proceedings against Collins, John, for Roxy's murder. The being is like, you know, he was gonna have to go back to Michigan to like finish his time anyway. So he was just like, we just gonna keep him there. But he was never charged for them. You know, they were just like, you know what, he already got life there. You know, you guys can just keep him there because he was gonna have to like, if he was convicted, he was just gonna have to serve in Michigan anyway. So he was never convicted for Roxy's murder or any other murders that happened during this time. Doesn't that piss you off? Pisses me off. So John in 1981 tried to transfer to like a Canadian prison in the belief that like he will be released in like eventually. Like holds like a dual citizenship in Canada because of his like dad's last name, which was Chapman. So he ended up eventually changing his name legally to John Norman Chapman because of this reason, and that he would have been at that time eligible for release after 9 years of his sentence. So his application of this was approved, and like he was like, yeah, I'm about to go to Canada, I'm about to be free, I'm about to be out here. But then it was later denied due to the public outrage. The public was like, you tripping, bro, you staying right here, you finna go where you think you about to get out, sir? You tripping, dog? Now you about to sit right here in this jail for the rest of your life, girl. Tripping. So that's exactly what happened. His appeal was reversed and it was denied. 2005, a former nurse named Gary Earl Lingerman was charged of the murder of Jane Mixer, who was considered the third victim of the Michigan murders. So I forgot, side note, I forgot to mention this in the video, but Harvey in like the documentary that I was watching believed Collins never worked alone. Like he felt like he didn't do this by himself. He had some type of accomplice. He had some type of like, you know, somebody, you know, that was helping him through these murders, but they could not confirm that. But when Gary was charged, they still suspected that like he maybe was an accomplice to John, but like he not really sure. Gary ended up being charged with Mixer's murder because of DNA evidence that they had discovered in 2001 when they reopened the case. So that's how he ended up getting caught up. But Collins is still currently living, you know, doing his life sentence and like the administrative part of segregation in prison. He still maintains his innocence. He's still like, not me. And you know, he still thinks that, you know, even though all the evidence against him, he still declines knowing anybody of the Michigan murders, and still also denied a whole bunch of like public polygraphs, you know, basically to like, people really wanted him to like seek his truth. They're like, okay, you say you're innocent, let's take a polygraph test. Let's do it. Even though polygraph test is not always 100%, but some people still believe like, okay, if a person will take one, they're kind of guilty. But everybody's innocent to proven guilty. But yeah, so that's kind of like the end of this tragic story. Like, this was a very deep one. Like, yo, please go like, subscribe, and yeah, I kind of will see you guys next time. Bye. I forgot to record my final thoughts as I'm sitting here editing this video. I forgot to record the final thoughts. So here's my final thoughts. My final thoughts is John should have been convicted of all murders. There's just too much evidence going on between that, you know, of him knowing them and stuff like that. But if John only could be charged with one more murder or two, I believe he should have been charged with Mary's and Dawn's, because he kind of knew of them. They were in close proximity of each other, and like it was possible that they end up crossing paths, because like EMU, it's kind of like not like a big campus, but like it's not too big where you're not going to at least run into a person more than twice. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like he should at least be charged with at least two more of them. He's currently still doing his life sentence, and you know, he deserves it. And you know, I do feel like he should do a polygraph test so that we can see, so that we can know, see if he's lying or not. If you know, I just feel like if you're telling the truth, what's the problem? Like, a polygraph test shouldn't do no harm. You know, not saying that polygraph test is always true, but I feel like if you're not guilty, you're not trying to hide nothing, you should at least do one. Ain't that right, baby? And yeah, so that's kind of like my final thoughts of what I think of the whole thing.